The global paradigm shift in logistics will occur when the Panama Canal Third Lock project is completed in 2016, creating a structural economic shift in the U.S. economy. Currently, the United States operates under what is called a second-generation intermodal transportation model. Large ships from Asia arrive on the West Coast and distribute cargo via truck or train to the Midwest and East Coast markets. The emerging third-generation intermodal transportation model is creating global economic opportunity for the East Coast markets by opening up access through the Panama Canal for larger Panamax ships carrying imports from Asia to arrive directly on the East Coast and service East Coast ports. Stop one for Panamax ships, directly to the Port of New York. The Port of New York, New Jersey has been preparing for the Panamax ships by dredging, raising the Bayonne Bridge height to accommodate larger ships, and building express rail loading docks for ships to direct load containers carrying international imports onto rail. This change, first, eliminates double handling of cargo containers when unloading to storage yards and then onto trucks or trains. Less handling reduces costs to importers and exporters in Central New York. If Central New York international importers and exporters had the cost-effective option of rail available to them, businesses would flourish. Second, this change reduces port congestion from idling tractor-trailer trucks waiting in increasingly long queues for loading and unloading containers. Idling trucks contribute to our carbon footprint and CO2 contributions. Economically, longer queue times mean longer hours for truckers and more cost to business. Central New York importers report that they have experienced increased costs because of longer turn times from truck drivers. The Port of New York's strategic plan forecasts a 100% volume increase in international cargo by 2020. The growing congestion at the port means increased cargo volume throughput with limited port-side real estate to store the containers. There are two options for Central New York importers and exporters. One, access the international market via cost-effective rail service, which currently is not available to Central New York. Or two, continue to use the least cost-effective mode of transportation, long-haul trucking to and from Central New York to the port. CSX, a Class 1 railroad, operates the main line. The main line is the preferred Class 1 rail path because it is the path of least resistance. The main line parallels the Hudson River and Erie Canal and has limited topography fluctuations, unlike the rail lines associated with other Class 2 and 3 railroads that traverse through the Catskills, for example. CSX's first mainline stop up from the port? The CSX DeWitt Yard in Central New York. Today, a CSX mainline train comes from the Port of New York on the main line to the CSX DeWitt Rail Yard 6 times a week, but it does not unload or load international containers for regional importers or exporters. International cargo containers are structurally different from domestic containers transported on truck. International shipping containers are structurally stronger, facilitating double stacking for transportation to global markets via train. If CNY continues to operate under the second-generation intermodal transportation model, regional importers and exporters are left stranded and unserved, with no ability to move their goods cost-effectively by railroad. They continue to have no choice but to utilize less cost-effective trucking to move regional imports and exports to and from the port. Or they can try to piece together rail service via second and third railroad systems. Central New York businesses have invested in growth and desire to move their goods, especially agriculture, to international global markets. From the DeWitt Rail Yard, containers with imports from the Port of New York remain on the train and are separated and directed either east to Boston or west to Chicago. Central New York is currently a pass-through market. Today, at the DeWitt Rail Yard, CSX operates a gantry crane servicing domestic cargo transported via the second-generation transportation model. Economic benefit is moved away from Central New York to East Coast and Midwest markets and states. Many other states have invested in their East Coast ports and inland ports. For Central New York importers and exporters, this means some exporters, like our very important agricultural markets, just won't be able to move into the global growth market for exporting. Their transportation choice remains trucking. And for the Central New York region's importers, they can continue to truck to and from the port, or, as the region has experienced, move to states where global transportation costs are reduced because of investment in access to Class I rail lines that are serviced by a major East Coast port. But this story doesn't have to end this way. Central New York can take advantage of its existing transportation asset at the DeWitt Rail Yard and invest to expand in the global third-generation intermodal model. Regional importers and exporters will benefit from service. The ability to match the container's needs of importers and exporters is essential to economic growth of businesses in the region. Business retention and growth means jobs and regional prosperity. The ability to provide service to regional international importers and exporters only requires the ability to move into the 3GI model of transportation and build upon the capital investment and existing assets like a gantry crane for moving cargo containers on and off the train. Being part of the 3GI model, longer truck miles will effectively be converted to more efficient rail miles, saving cost and reducing CO2 emissions, a major component of climate change. It's good for the environment and for the economy. New York State is open for business. The global market is waiting for Central New York, and 3GI's Central New York Inland Port is on track.
Prior to 1980, the freight rail industry was a financial mess. The railroads were losing money, unable to maintain their track, and going bankrupt. That all changed with the 1980 passage of the Staggers Rail Act. The Staggers Act deregulated the freight rail industry and empowered railroads to determine their own routes and price their services. Almost immediately, the large Class I railroads began to strand their unprofitable rail lines. Syracuse was no exception. Local companies along Syracuse's stranded rail are beholden to CSX's paper barriers and tariffs, if they get service at all. Since the Staggers Act, courts have upheld CSX's rights to control pricing and access to its track.
So as we've heard, port congestion is a critical issue in Central New York. We have shipper costs that are increasing, we have increased traffic, and we're competing with other states that have low-cost alternatives for international shipment. We have direct rail cost reduction as a necessity in Central New York. Cargo loaded directly from the ship to the train, we've learned, makes all the difference in the world from a cost perspective. We also need to have service to the stranded assets located in Central New York. We have many industrial facilities that have been vacated in the absence of rail service. Central New York business viability depends on shipping costs. Existing Central New York's business need low-cost shipping in order to remain viable. New business can be attracted by cost-competitive import and export costs. In the absence of these options, businesses are moving and will not relocate to Central New York. This is Central New York's opportunity to take advantage of a structural shift. It is competing with other states making significant investment in their infrastructure. These efforts combine hundreds of millions of dollars of public and private capital to lure business with cost-effective shipping. Absent cost-competitive shipping alternatives, Central New York is closed for business.
As we've come to find out, Class I railroads make money after they go 500 miles. The good news here is it's 250 miles up, 250 miles down. That's 500 miles. We have to ask CSX first, will they service us with international cargo? Second, 3GI, who spent approximately $4 million to date in partnership with the state of New York and has an additional $1 million. Will they continue to work in partnership with 3GI to define through the engineering designing of what's needed to give a real cost estimate as to what the state can offer in terms of additional support to make this a realization? Two public studies in 1991 and 2003 concluded that the expansion of the CSX International Freight Yard is needed for Central New York's economic development.